Will everyone please join me in Gassho by placing your hands together and repeat the Nembutsu with me. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandats, namandats, namandats. Good morning, everyone. So, to get the elephant, or to address the elephant in the room, many Dharma school students might be wondering, why was Sensei sitting on his knees in front of the Onaijin today? This is because I and Reverend Cindy are going to be going back to Japan tomorrow. We are leaving tomorrow, and we will be in Japan for 10 days. And during that time, we will be participating in special services at the Nishi Honganji Temple in Kyoto. And during that time, I will be expected to sit in the traditional Japanese manner called seiza. Dharma school students, can you please say that word with me? Say it with me, seiza. Very good. This is a traditional way of sitting in Japanese culture. And it may look easy, but try sitting that way for over 10 minutes and see how you do. And you probably will start feeling a tingling in your legs, and you'll start feeling a little bit of pain maybe. And then not only do priests have to sit this way for about 40 minutes to an hour, but then they have to immediately stand up and walk off of the Onaijin. So for the past few months, I have been, every day, I have been coming inside the temple and practicing sitting in this manner to prepare myself for going to Japan. But today we are commemorating the Ohigan service, which is the equinox service, as well as the Lady Kujo, Lady Ohtani service, and the BWA memorial service. Dharma school students, do you know what BWA stands for? What does BWA stand for? Just say it. One more time. Very good. Buddhist Women's Association. Now, I would like at this time for all members of the Buddhist Women's Association to please stand up in the Hondo. All members of the Buddhist Women's Association, please stand up. This is an incredibly essential organization to the Buddhist churches of America and to our head temple of Nishi Honganji. Lady Kujo and Lady Ohtani began the blueprint of this organization during their time. Not only did they put their blood, sweat, and tears into assisting and ensuring the continuance of Jodo Shinshu, but put their efforts towards humanitarian causes in Japan as well, like assisting with the victims of the great earthquake, okay? This type of feeling and generosity and compassion continues to this day, and it is a perfect reflection of the wisdom and compassion given by Amida Buddha. And I ask this question now, where would our temple be without the BWA? And I can easily say without a shadow of a doubt that the temple would not be here. We take a lot of things for granted. And it's not that I'm calling you out or condemning or saying you're bad, we all do, I do, right? We, like there are times where we see tea that's made or coffee that's made, or we indulge in wonderful snacks at this temple. And it is because of the efforts of the BWA. There are so many events that are successful at this temple because of the efforts of the BWA, of the Buddhist Women's Association. I myself have been exposed to the workings and the compassion of the Buddhist Women's Association from a very young age. When I was a young Dharma school student, probably in elementary school, I would go to the Lodi Buddhist Church and I would see the BWA women working diligently to put all the teriyaki bento boxes together. and my grandmother was one of these members. Attending the Sacramento Betsuin, I would always walk by the huge kitchen that was there at the Betsuin, and I don't know if this was the reason for that, but that was where the Sacramento Fujinkai, or BWA, would always hold their Sunday meetings. So my great auntie Mei Ogata was always there, and she would always wave at me. And I was always going, what are they talking about in there? But, for rest assured, they were talking about strategies and plans for the next big temple event and what their role was going to be. When we think about the various events that take place at the Tacoma Buddhist Temple, I can guarantee you that always and for certain, the BWA plays a role. Always. Now, of course, our general membership is irreplaceable and essential to our continuance of the temple. But without the BWA to continue the tradition of doing their part in their assistance, we would not have these events to be able to call successes. We would not be able to have the many fundraising events that continues this temple on and on. This is why it is always important for us to really be grateful to the members of the BWA. This is why I had members of the BWA stand up. Because when you are general members of the temple or Dharma school students, it's really important that you acknowledge their hard work and dedication to this temple. And this is not to diminish all of our dedication to the temple, but to acknowledge that this is an organization within all the temples of the BCA and in Japan that continues to drive Jodo Shinshu into the future. Okay? So with this in mind, I would like to thank the BWA for their continued dedicated service, and to remember those BWA members who have been born into the Pure Land long before us sitting here today. Now, switching topics to Ohigan. Dharma school students, do you remember what Ohigan means? Anyone? Okay, we do this twice a year. So, when I go like this, does that give you a hint? Ohigan means? Oh, yes. Say that one more time. Other shore. Very good. Yes. Other shore. Ohigan is the time where we celebrate the equinox, where the time of day and the time of night are equal. And this is symbolic of the transformation from the shore of unenlightenment to the shore of enlightenment. So, this is a time where we go to services in Japan, where you become vegetarian for about a week. Is anyone here vegetarian right now? Okay, so one person. So, so in Japan, during the week of Ohigan, people, Buddhist families actually go vegetarian for 1 week. Now, as Jodo Shinshu Buddhists, we don't really need to do this. However, this is a wonderful time to think about the other shore of enlightenment. And especially in the time of, in this time where we can easily get caught up in ourselves. So, of course, we, always have things on our mind. We always, are caught up with the next thing that we want to do, the next assignment that we want to, that we want to complete, or, even the things that that we think about in high school, like dating, or, or I don't know, school dances. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've been a high school student. That being said, during this time of Ohigan, I encourage all Dharma school students to take the time to think about others, right? It is so easy for us to think about me, myself, and I. But now, during this week of Ohigan, I want to encourage us all, but Dharma school students, to think of others. Think of those who care for you, those who nurture you. And when you think about the amount of people that is, it's a lot. Of course, your parents and your immediate family are obvious choices, and they should not be discounted, and you should thank them. But what about the person who delivers your mail every day? What about your teacher? What about the fire department or the police department who helps to keep us safe? What about all of our community members who ensure that we keep a nice, tidy community? All of these things, when we think about the amount of people who put wonderful influence in our lives, we can't count them on our fingers and toes. And so in this time of Ohigan, I highly encourage Dharma school students to, when you start to think about I'm bored or I'm upset, I'm angry, or I'm really frustrated, try to think about someone outside as well, someone outside of yourself. With this in mind, I would like to thank you all for coming to our spring Ohigan service. This is a busy week ahead of us and a busy time for all of us. And in this time of great transition from winter to spring, let us think of others who bring joy and nurturing and care into our lives. And this also includes Amida Buddha, who gives us wisdom and compassion on a daily basis. So with that in mind, please join me in Gassho and recite the Nembutsu with me. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandats, 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 namandats. Shakyamuni Tathagata appeared in this world solely to teach the ocean-like primal vow of Amida. We, an ocean of beings in an evil age of 5 defilements, should entrust ourselves to the Tathagata's words of truth. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandats, namandats, namandats. Good morning, everyone. Just give me 2 seconds while the feeling comes back into my legs. Whew. And if I thought that was hard, at least we didn't go through the Nembutsu Wasan portion of Shoshinge, because for that entire time I have to remain seated in Seiza. But I structured the service today kind of following a similar formula as to what's done at the head temple of Nishihonganji, which is first having the service done in the Amida Buddha Hall called Amida-do, where we chant Sanbutsuge, and then going to the Founders Hall, Goeido, where the statue of Shinran Shonin is enshrined, where we chant the Shoshi Nembutsuge along with the Nembutsu Wasan. And it is a long time to sit Seiza, but I am determined to go back to Japan and continue with this tradition. The quote that I recited from today comes from Shinran Shonin's Shoshinge. We actually chanted it today. So, so this talks about the portion from the larger sutra where Shakyamuni Buddha basically declares why he appeared in this world, which was to teach us the wisdom and compassion and the ocean-like primal vow of Amida Buddha, the 18th vow, basically stating that I will save all sentient beings from this world of samsara, allowing them to be born in the Pure Land. And then I know that the statement sounds a little bit strong, especially with beings in an evil age of 5 defilements, but that is actually, we have to take that phrase with a Buddhist context, right? So when we're talking about evil and defilements, right, we're not really passing judgment on ourselves, and we're not really calling ourselves, like, in the Christian connotation of sinners, right? What we're talking about is being in an age that is so far from the time of the Buddha that it's nearly impossible to hear the truth from the Buddha's mouth, okay? So we're not talking about, like, we're all these evil, like, horrible people or anything like that. We are simply stating the truth about who we are, and that is unenlightened beings. Once again, going forward with this notion that the reason for Amida Buddha is for our benefit. the wisdom and compassion that's ceaselessly coming to us from the world of the Pure Land. We have to remember that during Shakyamuni Buddha's time, he was, able to teach us a lot, to teach us the path and the way to become fully enlightened. But he was also, I think, a pragmatist and someone who was able to think outside of the box and realized that even he, as we can all see in the pictures depicted on the walls on the side, realized that he would not be in this world forever. So we cannot hear the words of truth directly from the Buddha's mouth. And he realized that he too would have to succumb to the everlasting impermanence that is death. And in that time as well, he realized he had to give us a teaching that would last throughout the ages. And that is the teaching of Namo Amida Butsu. So for all of you who are first-timers here to the temple or who haven't been coming very long, you notice that all of us place our hands together and say, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. That is our practice of Jodo Shinchu. So we don't, Jodo Shinchu, in this sect of Jodo Shinchu, we don't sit zazen the way you see Zen Buddhist monks do. We don't have our beads apart like this and chant countless mantras, and do the circles of meditation that tantric Buddhists do. We don't have fancy instruments or implements, as much as I would like that sometimes, but we don't have all those really spiritual implements that we use. We just have an oninju and we place our hands together and say Namo Amida Butsu. This is the simple teaching that was given to us by Shakyamuni Buddha all those, the 2 millennia ago that he existed. This was a practical teaching because in this teaching it tells us that all we need to do is say Namo Amida Butsu, and all the countless practices and hard works that Amida Buddha does comes to benefit us. And when I say benefit, I don't mean that you're going to get rich from saying Namo Amida Butsu. You're going to get, lucky. You're going to get that new car that you always wanted. It is this realization of our imperfect selves, realizing the Dharma is still there, working for our benefit. And so this is why this is why Shinran Shonin encouraged all of us to entrust ourselves into the teaching of the Nembutsu way. Now, some people are born with the fervor and the karmic conditions to undertake these hard practices, to undertake the rigorous trainings on Mount Hiei and march around Mount Hiei 1,000 days and to starve themselves for 9 days or for 7 days to come close to mortality and spiritual enlightenment. But most people, probably 99.9% of people, and this includes me, are not born with that karmic background, are not born with the fervor of religious training and spiritual awakening that we can achieve in this life. I must fully admit to my limitations as an unenlightened being and take refuge in the teaching of Amida Buddha. Now, of course, as a human being, this doesn't mean that I relinquish my self-control and indulge in hedonism and harming others as well. This purely means that I can do the best that I can possibly do. But at the end of the day, I must accept the fact that I am also imperfect. This is a dance and sort of a conversation that Shinran was having with himself as well. He dedicated his life to spiritual practice, to awakening with self-power practices, but realized that he could not do it. And then found his teacher in Master Honen Shonin, who taught him the simplicity yet deep teaching of Namo Amida Butsu, taking refuge in Amida Buddha. For in our practice and in our teachings, all we need to do is say Namo Amida Butsu, and Amida Buddha accepts us for who we are and where we are in our lives. This doesn't mean, again, that we have to be Japanese. This doesn't mean we have to be heterosexual. This doesn't mean that we have to gender identify as a male or female or as man or a woman. We are embraced for who we are as we are. And this is a message that I think is timeless and should be heard in this, in this day and age, and in the way I think, our society is right now. Right now, we, I think, can acknowledge that our society and our geopolitical sphere is incredibly divided. And it's probably the chasm between what we consider to be two sides, which is, by also my personal opinion, a fallacy, where there's only two sides to this deep divide. When there are countless little, I think of actually this huge divide or schism as countless little islands drifting further and further apart. We're clinging, I think, to people who we can agree with the most and getting on that raft and drifting further and further away. We want to distance ourselves from people we don't like or people we don't agree with. And yet at the same time, even amongst this divide and in this time of humanity when things can seem like we are drifting further and further apart, I think in this time, the message of Amida Buddha needs to come very, very clearly to us. Another terminology, I think, in light of Ohigan is upaya, or skillful means. And actually, when I was at the Oregon Buddhist temple last week, someone said upaya as, I think, a very, very insightful way. Upaya means to preach the Dharma or to teach the Dharma in a way that people will understand. But this person from Oregon Buddhist Temple actually said, I also think of upaya as meeting people where they are. Some people may not be ready to hear the deep teachings of Shinshu just yet. Some people may not be ready to hear the words like evil or faith or spiritual enlightenment, things like that. And yet the Dharma still has ways of meeting people where they are and gently teaching them the ways of the Buddha Dharma. It is not my job to convert others to the way that I think. However, my job is to simply convey the message of Shinran Shonin hopefully as best as I possibly can, in a way that may resonate with you and that you may understand. And yet, Shinran Shonin's message can be so simple, of just say the Nembutsu. You are accepted for who you are. Amida Buddha embraces all living beings. This is a simple, beautiful, deep message, and yet at the same time, it is so hard for us as unenlightened beings to take this message to heart. Because as unenlightened beings, we calculate in our minds, who is worthy of our respect, who is worthy of our time, who is worthy to be saved, who is worthy to be enlightened. All of these things, I think all of us can be a bit guilty of. And it's very easy to live in this world now where social media is very present, where we can go onto the social media and basically live in an echo chamber of people who just agree with us. But at the same time, looking at those people over there, I'm pointing at hypothetical people, by the way, hypothetical people over there and say they are so incorrect, or even calling them disparaging names, when realizing that by doing that alone, we further the problem of the divide. Now again, I'm not saying that we shouldn't speak up for injustice. When we, actually even one of my teachers who was a Zen practitioner from the Institute of Buddhist Studies gave a very wonderful explanation of what it's like to sit Zazen. This is Reverend Daijaku Kinst from one of her classes. We think of Zen practitioners as these people who just sit on cushions all day and do nothing or think nothing. But she was saying that, we allow ourselves to be present in the moment. If we are sitting and we hear the wind blow, let the wind blow. If we are sitting and we hear a car go by, let the car go by. If we are sitting and we hear an assault outside, get up and do something about it, right? So Buddhism and Jodo Shinshu itself as well is not this religion of I'm not going to do anything, I'm just going to let Amida Buddha do all the work and I can be lazy and Amida Buddha embraces me. Absolutely not. Jodo Shinchu is a deep self-reflection of looking at who we are inside. And once again, it is not my job as a minister to judge each and every one of you and say, this is what you're doing wrong, or this is where you're falling short. That's not my job at all. My job as a minister is to convey the message of Shinran Shonin for all of us to share in. My job as a Jodo Shinchu minister is to be here for all of you when you are in need of spiritual care. My job as a minister is to walk with you hand in hand in the path of Namo Amida Butsu. And I promise not to stray from that path. And it can be hard. We say that Namo Amida Butsu is the easy path, or the easy teaching. But when it comes to why, we can never truly answer that without getting into a book of this proportion as to why the Nembutsu is the way that's meant for us. Once again, I'm not disparaging other Buddhist schools. Other Buddhist schools are wonderful. And like I jokingly say, one of my mentors, Reverend Kuohara, was a little bit worried that I might convert to Tendai Buddhism and stay up on Mount Hiei. But at the end of the day, I once again realized that all I can do is chant the words of Shinran Shonin and Shakyamuni Buddha, who teach us about Amida Buddha's everlasting presence of wisdom and compassion in our lives. In this time of political turmoil, of suffering and war, where we are seeing people suffering in front of our eyes, let us utilize this message of Namo Amida Butsu to deeply reflect in ourselves how we could possibly make society better. Right? This doesn't mean go start a revolution and cause chaos, by no means. But this does mean that maybe, asking ourselves, are we doing all that we can? But how much can we do? Because sometimes we fail, and that's okay. Sometimes we try, and we fall a little short. That's fine. But that doesn't mean that we give up either. But it also doesn't mean we force our will upon others as well. This is the delicate balance we live, I think, as Buddhists in society. How can we very carefully and very gently influence others while not becoming the very thing that we are trying to, free ourselves from? With this in mind, I encourage all of us to think on the legacy of Master Shinran Shonin, as today is the 16th of the month and is designated as as a day of memorialization to Master Shinran as well. Thank you all so much for joining us today for our spring Ohigan service. And with this in mind, please join me in Gasho as I recite the words one more time of our master, Shinran Shonin. Shakyamuni Tathagata appeared in this world solely to teach the ocean-like primal vow of Amida. We, an ocean of beings in an evil age of 5 defilements, should entrust ourselves to the Tathagata's words of truth. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandats, namandats, namandats.